Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to be sewing this beautiful dress. In the part 1 of this video I showed you how you can cut both the upper part and the lower part. So this is going to be the part 2, which is the sewing video. But if you haven't watched it, I'm going to be putting the link in the description box. Go ahead and check it out. So without wasting your time, let's go straight into the video. So looking at this pattern, you will see that I've added joining allowance to the side fronts and to the center front, and this is my back piece. I've already added my sewing allowance, and as you can see I cut it out on a fold and there is no joining, so I didn't add any joining allowance. And this is my neck band. I cut it out on a fold and I cut out 2 pieces of it because I'm going to be using one to turn the other. And I also added 1/2 inch joining allowance. I'll be using that to join it together with the main bodice. And this is my pockets. I cut out 4 pieces of this. I'm going to be attaching 2 on one side and 2 on the other side. So before I separate the pattern paper from the fabric, I'm going to notch the under bust, the bust point, and then the chest line. This is going to make it easier for me so that I will know where my padding is going to start from, because your padding should start from the under bust to the chest line. So it is important you notch those areas. I also went ahead to notch that area on my back piece and the center front of my neck band. So I'm just going to set my pattern paper aside. And now that I've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is to iron my paper stay. Then I'll go ahead to cut out my wording. So let me do that and show you what next to do. So this is it. I ironed in the paper stay to give it more stability before going ahead to iron my wording. So ensure that you do the same thing before ironing in your wording. And now that I've done that, I'm going to place the 2 side fronts together, and I'm going to start stitching from the lower part to the top part using my joining allowance. And as a beginner, I will advise you to follow that technique because it is easier for you to navigate when you start stitching from the lower part. And for my lining, I'm going to be joining them together just like I'm doing for the main piece. So this is the back piece. I've gone ahead to cut out my facing, and this is how you are going to place your design if you are not working with a lining. You're going to place the right side of your facing on the wrong side of your fabric. Then you're going to pin it down, and after that you will take it to the sewing machine and you will stitch with a 1/4 inch. And when you are done with that, you will flip it to the right side, fold in a 1/4 inch and make a top stitch. But for me, because I'm working with a lining, I will be placing the right side of my facing on the right side of my fabric. That is, the wrong side will be facing the right side. If you don't understand what I'm saying, you can look at what I'm doing. And after that, I will stitch it down with a 1/4 inch around the armhole before folding in a 1/4 inch at this point and make a top stitch. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to place it together with the lining, and I'll stitch all around, leaving out the neckline and the lower parts. So I will go ahead and do that and show you. And this is the front piece. When I was done joining them together, this is what I have. Now I'm going to trim out this excess along the armhole, and I'll be doing the same thing for the lining. And now that I've done that, I'll go ahead to cut out my facing. So I've placed my armhole on a folded fabric. I'm just going ahead to mark the outlines. At the top edge here, I came in by 2.5 inches. But depending on how wide you want your bands to be, you can decide to increase or reduce it. So I marked 2.5 inches from the outline. Then I cut out my front facing, just like I did for the back facing. And so this is it. I'm just going ahead to place it right side on right side, just like I did for the back piece. And I'm going to pin it down with my pins. And also at the top edge, I'm also going to pin it down. And at this point, you can go ahead to use your pressing iron to fold in the 1/2 inch so that it will be easier for you by the time you're stitching it down. Because trust me, stitching down a curved edge can somehow be tricky. So take your time to actually fold it in. Use your pressing iron before making your top stitch. And when you are done with that, place your lining right side facing each other and turn the armhole and the side seam. So I'm going to do that and show you. So this is it. I've done that, and looking at mine, you will see that it is not all that perfect. So try not to use a stretchy fabric for this, but I'm going to use my pressing iron to make it look better. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place the front and the back side together just like this. and I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and join them together at the side seam using my sewing allowance. So for the neck band, which was cut on a fold, I'm going to open it up, and when you do, this is what it should look like. So I've gone ahead to stitch it around the neckline, but before I flip it to the right side, I will go ahead and notch it all around. Notching this part is very important because it will help it relax along the neckline. But when doing that, try not to cut through your stitching line, and I also go ahead to close both edges. So this is it. After flipping it to the right side, this is what you should have. So at this point, go ahead and use your pressing iron to iron everything flat. But I don't have light at the moment, so I have to work with what I have. So I folded it into two and I notched the center point. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach it to my main piece. So I folded the center front into two and notched the center point. Now I'm going to place the waistband like this, right side to right side and center point to center point. I'm going to start pinning from the center point towards the right till I get to the end here. And I'll also pin it towards the left. Just watch what I'm doing, you will understand. It's very simple. Now I'm done pinning down the front. Let me show you how to pin the back. You're going to take the end of the band and match it together with the center back. And you will start pinning from that point towards the end of the neckline. And after that, you will do the same thing for the other side. And as you can see, I'm matching the other end of my band to my center back. So I pinned it from my center back to the end of my back neckline. So after doing that, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I will stitch it down using 1/2 inch. And at this point, I was done doing that. Can you see how it looks? So the next thing we are going to do is that we are going to fold in another 1/2 inch to cover up the stitch we just made. So I'm going to pin 1/2 inch inward and I will cover up this point. And when you are doing that, make sure that the center point is matching the center point. So I'll go ahead and pin it all around. And when you get to this point, which is in between the front and the back neckline, fold in 1/2 inch on both sides and pin them together. Trust me, this process will actually take you some time to get it right, but take your time to do that. And when I was done pinning this side, I went over to pin the other side. And when you are done with that, this is what you should have. So go ahead and use your pressing iron to press it down before taking it to your sewing machine to make a top stitch. And when I was done with that, this is what I have. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach that band around the waistline. And this is my strip of fabric. The length is 3 inches and the width, I use my waist measurement. So on the waistline, I'm just going ahead to mark 2.5 inches all around. And that is going to be the point where I'm going to be placing my band. Now I placed the band along that 2.5 inches I just marked and I went ahead to pin it down. And after doing that, I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I will stitch from that point to the end using 1/2 inch. And when I'm done with that, I'm going to flip it downward to match the waistline. And when I was done stitching it down, this is what I have. So I'm just going to set it aside and work on the lower parts. So this is the front piece. And from the waistline, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches. And from that 1.5 inches, I will place my pocket and pin it down, matching the side seam to the side seam and the right side to the right side. So I'm going to do the same for the other side. And now that I've done that, I'll go ahead and stitch it down. And when I'm done with that, I will do the same thing for the two back pieces. So this is it. I have done that. The next thing I'm going to do is to open up my center front. So I'm going to fold it into two and I'll cut it open. So this is the band I'm going to be attaching the center front. I cut out about 3 inches, and for the length I use my lower part measurements. So I'll go ahead and place it on right side facing the wrong side of my fabric before going ahead to stitch it down. And when you are done with that, this is what it should look like. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place them wrong side on each other, just like this, and I'll pin it down along the stitching line. So after pinning it down, I marked 20 inches from my waistline, which is where I want my opening to start from. So go ahead and mark the point where you want your opening to start. Then you will stitch from the waistline to that point, and after that you will flip it to the right side. So after doing that, this is what I have. Can you see? Now the next thing I'm going to do is to start folding in 1/2 inch. So after doing that, I will use my pressing iron to iron it flat before taking it to my sewing machine to make a top stitch. So I'm going to be doing this for both ends. So after doing that, I'm going to place the front and the back together, and I will join them at the side seam. So I will start stitching from the waistline down to the pocket, then to the side seam before taking it down to the hemline. And I'm going to be doing this with my stitching allowance. And when I'm done with that, I will do the same thing for the other side. So after doing that, I now have one piece for my back. So what I'm going to do now is to join the upper part together with the lower parts. So I'm going to fold my upper part into 2 and notch the center point. So I will pin center point to center point. Then I will continue matching them together till I get to the center back. And after that, I will take it to my sewing machine and join them together with my joining allowance. So I will do that and show you what next to do. So this is it. I've joined them together. Now the next thing we are going to do is to insert our zipper. So from the band, I will mark 23 inches, which is where I want my zipper to stop. And when you are inserting your zipper, make sure you take note of your band, because you would want both sides to match together. So take note of that. So I'm going to mark my 23 inches. Then I'll go ahead to pin down my zipper. So I'm going to start pinning from my neckband using my zipper allowance. And after that, I'll close up the rest of the center back. Then I'll go ahead to hem my dress and put it on for you to see. And this is it, guys. Can you see how beautiful this looks? So guys, if you find this video useful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, put on your post notification bell so that whenever I upload a new video, you will be notified. Until I see you in my next video, stay blessed.